What's up, tennis fans? Sleepy Picks here. We published a previous video on the first semifinal pick. This will combine both of them, and we will look at Lehecka and Fils and the Sinner Zverev semifinals. Looking forward to it. Let's get started. Here's a look at our quarterfinals record. I was able to sweep the board. Panda and the walk-on sweeping their picks that they gave out. Pompom was missing the one Cerundolo pick, but overall a really good day for all four of us. Let's recap the first two quarterfinals and take a look at Lehecka versus Fils. And the first quarterfinal was Lehecka beating Landaluce, and we did call a straight sets. Everybody on the cast called a straight sets win for Lehecka, but I think we thought it was going to be a little bit easier than what we saw. This was a great performance from Landaluce. You could definitely tell that he was tired. The legs kind of slowed down a little bit. Lehecka sensed that his all-around game is very good against a guy like that. Lehecka able to push the Landaluce around with a forehand, come into net, hit some short balls, challenge that up and back movement of Landaluce. And honestly, I think Landaluce did such a good job just being able to stay with Lehecka. 10 break points by Lehecka, and Lehecka finally able to knock the door down and get his one break was the match point. So he was able to get that and win the match in the second set. But Landaluce able to save 9 break points. I mean, extremely impressive from him. I think he's got a lot of confidence. It's so interesting to see. You know, the walk-on was talking about this last night, the depth of the ATP Tour. Like, this is a guy that has never been in this situation, but just to see him, the patterns that he comes up with to save these break points, he always goes to, shots where he's extremely confident, and that's great to see from a guy like that. Now, one thing that the announcers were talking about a little bit is that he's extremely close to the French Open rankings cutoff. So fingers crossed that he's going to be able to get into that. Would be such a shame to see a guy making this kind of run, kind of feeling himself right now, and then not being able to make it into the world's second Grand Slam of the year. So hopefully he's able to get in. I think the cutoff is next week. So that's extremely important to get him into that match. Let's take a look at some of the statistics here from the match. We had Lehecka 40 winners to the Landaluce 39 winners. Lehecka with 8 aces to the Landaluce 6 aces. Lehecka serving at 64% first serves, winning 85% of those first serves. He also served at 58%, winning 58% of his second serves. And Landaluce serving at 62% first serves, winning 70% of those first serves, and winning 57% of his second serves. Landaluce only getting 1 break point, and he was 0 for 1, and Lehecka 1 for 10 on his break chances. And in that first set breaker, I think it was pretty evident the fatigue that Landaluce was kind of feeling. I feel like we've seen him play so many clutch matches that I was just surprised to see a 7-1 breaker. And in that breaker, there were a couple of unforced errors. There was a missed drop shot that was really uncalled for from Landaluce, and then there was a double fault. So just a lot of errors that we're not used to seeing from him. And it could be the moment, but it could also be fatigue. It could be a mix of both. So he drops that first set, 7-1. They go back and forth in the second set. Landaluce gets a break chance, I believe, right around 3-all, and not able to convert there. Lehecka, sensing the moment, is able to push Landaluce in that final game. Landaluce had 40-30 to bring it into a breaker, but Lehecka just too tough, pushing Landaluce around with that forehand, hitting confidently from Lehecka. He's able to win this match 7-6, 7-5. Let's take a look at the next quarterfinal. And this match has to be one of the nominees for match of the year so far. Obviously, that Sinner Djokovic semifinal of in Australia, that was a classic, but this one really delivered. We had the walk-on said this was going to be a popcorn match. That's exactly what we got. I couldn't take my eyes off this match. Clean tennis. It looked at the end of the third set, Tommy Paul's winning all the long points. It felt like the shot aggression of Arthur Fils was starting to diminish. Paul just getting every ball back, making Fils hit big shot after big shot. And it just felt like the body blows continued to land on Paul, but he's able to deflect every single one. We get to a breaker. Tommy Paul up 6-3 in the breaker, and we see a Houdini act from Arthur Fils, able to get out and win the breaker 8-6 in the third set. Just an incredible match, and honestly, I would have been happy with either player winning. Obviously, we picked Arthur Fils to get through in straight sets. That wasn't even close. This felt like a Tommy Paul match the whole way through. Let's take a look at some of those stats here from this match. Aces, we had Tommy Paul with 6, Arthur Fils with 10, 2 double faults from Fils. Arthur Fils serving at 70%, winning 78% of those points. Tommy Paul serving at 63%, winning 84% of those points. Tommy Paul winning 68% of the second serve points, and Arthur Fils winning 74% of the second serve points. No break points converted here. There were only 7 total. Fis's first break point came in the 6-5 game of Tommy Paul serving to get it to that third set breaker. So up until then, Tommy Paul extremely clean on his serve. We were completely wrong saying that it was going to be the Arthur Fils return, taking advantage of the Tommy Paul second serve. We saw how well Paul served against Etcheverry. I thought that was going to be just because Etcheverry, more defensive style, that Fils was going to come in with a much more aggressive style. That wasn't really the case. I mean, Fils definitely throwing his blows, but he wasn't connecting as much as I thought he would here. And credit to Tommy Paul, he's able to win the majority of the long points in the third set. The majority of the long points in the second set. They were about split in the first, but not enough to beat Arthur Fils. Fils just too strong. And guys, we talk about Fils coming back from injury. He's trying to groove himself here. He's trying to figure out where he stands with all the top guys. He remembers how good he was challenging Carlos on the clay last year. Now he's back. This is going to be a massive confidence booster for Arthur Fils. One of the big things I will note, though, is thankfully he gets a day off. I think if he had to come and play the semifinal match the next day, I think he would have had a lot of issues physically, but also mentally, because you have to be emotionally exhausted from playing a match like this, just grinding it out, no breaks, winning it 6-7, 7-6, 7-6. Just an extremely tough fight from Arthur Fils. We're going to see a lot more of him this year. Let's move on to the semifinal breakdown. And here's a look at our first semifinal match for the Miami Open. Arthur Fils taking on Yuri Lehecka. Both guys playing an amazing quarterfinal match. Very tough. They're grooved. They're ready to go. They get a day off, which is nice. Let's take a look at Fis's road to the semifinals. He's able to beat Darwin Blanche 6-2, 6-3. He takes out Tsitsipas 6-0, 6-1. He takes out Vachereau 6-4, 6-7, 6-4, and then he takes out Tommy Paul in impressive fashion 6-7, 7-6, 7-6. Fils improves to 11-2 on the outdoor hard courts. He just looks great. The forehand is booming. He loves the pace of these courts. I love everything that I'm seeing from Arthur Fils. Let's take a look at Yuri Lehecka's path to the semifinals. He beats Kwame 6-2, 7-5. He takes out Ethan Quinn, who we know is playing good tennis, making it out to the third round, winning the Phoenix Challenger last week. Lehecka beats him 6-3, 7-6. He takes care of Taylor Fritz 6-4, 6-7, 6-2, and then he beats Martin Landaluce 7-6, 7-5. Yuri Lehecka is 9-5 on the outdoor hard courts. Looking at their head-to-head, it is 2-1 for Arthur Fils. Arthur Fils winning their last matchup, which was this year, 6-3, 6-3 in the quarterfinals of Doha. Those are also fast courts as well. They did play 2 other times. Yuri Lehecka winning last year in 2025 in Toronto, a 3-setter over Arthur Fils, 3-6, 6-3, 6-4 in the third round. And Arthur Fils winning in Davis Cup, it looks like 6-7, 7-5, 6-4 in 2024. This was on an indoor hard court. Looking at this matchup a little bit further, guys, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch the battle of these two forehands back to back again. And we remember that Lehecka Arthur Fils match. And the one thing that I felt we saw was Arthur Fils able to find the Lehecka backhand and really expose it, where Lehecka wasn't able to step around and hit the forehand that he wants because the ball was coming so fast. You have Arthur Fils taking the ball early on the backhand side, just ripping the forehand extremely big, that Lehecka wasn't able to get a lot of time to kind of step in and rope the forehand the way he wants. Is he going to have time here on this court? I really don't think so. I think we're going to see more of the same. The one thing that worries me was what I had mentioned earlier is I wonder how emotionally exhausted Arthur Fils is from that Tommy Paul match. I think it's great that he gets a day off, but for him to get out and win that match, having 3 straight match points back to back to back to save in a breaker where there were no breaks in a match, it's a lot to get through. I think he's going to be ready. I love the way that Arthur Fils engages with the crowd. That's something that we don't really see much from Lehecka. I mean, this whole crowd is going to be on the side of Arthur Fils, and I think that's going to help him as well. He really does, like, even in a crowd that was very pro Tommy Paul, Arthur Fils is still kind of raising his hand up, calling them to cheer him on. You love to see that, and the Miami crowd appreciates good tennis for sure. I really feel like this is going to be a 3-set win for Arthur Fils, if not a straight set win for Arthur Fils. Something tells me this is going to get a little bit tricky at some point. Like, maybe we see that Arthur Fils has control of this match, and he has a chance to get to a Masters final. And we see the nerves kind of settle in a little bit. We saw that in the match point that he had in that 6-5 game. Second serve from Tommy Paul. Fils ropes a forehand, and Tommy Paul's able to deflect it. Fils goes over to hit that cross-court forehand and misses it by a mile. And you could feel the nerves a little bit. And then I think the next couple of points were a few errors from him, just like thinking, I think, about that missed opportunity there. But then having saved those match points, he started to free up a little bit and really just strike the ball a little bit more confidently. So I do think this is going to get a little bit tricky for one guy or the other. This is a huge opportunity for both guys to get out to a final of a Masters Series. Remember, Lehecka hasn't made a semifinal of a Masters Series since 2024, back in Madrid when he got hurt, when he got injured. And he's been recovering from a back injury ever since. Now he's here and back and ready to go. I think this is going to be a great match. I can't wait to see both these forehands on display. Two of the best forehands on tour. But I'm going to go with Fils. Give me Arthur Fils in 3 sets. And the next quarterfinal was between Tiafoe and Sinner, and this was a very straightforward match. Sinner serving extremely well. I kind of liked the strategy that Tiafoe came out with. He was hugging the baseline. He was trying to take time away from Sinner. The one problem that I saw was every time that he got an approach shot, he needed to flatten that ball out a little bit more. He just left too much air on the ball, got passed by Sinner a lot in the first set. We saw the intent in Tiafoe to take the aggression and kind of play some offense, try to rush Sinner a little bit. I think that's the way that maybe you could challenge Sinner a little bit, challenge his footwork, not let him set up for that big forehand. So I did see a good intent there. The other thing that I was a little bit concerned with was I felt like we talked about the Mickelson match and how Mickelson was able to play strong, unpredictable tennis. There are a lot of shots where he would get pulled out wide, and instead of going back to the middle or to the cross, he would rope it down the line. And Tiafoe has those shots. I felt like I didn't see enough of them. I felt like I wanted to see a little bit more of that high-flying, big-hitting Frances Tiafoe, and we just didn't see enough of that today, and that cost him. He wasn't able to produce enough offense. Sinner was able to defend the ball extremely well. He also served extremely well today. Let's take a look at those service numbers from Jannik Sinner. 14 aces, first serves at 70%, won 83 of those, 83% of those first serves. And here's the kicker: 75% of second serve points won. That is going to win you a ton of matches. So not a lot of pressure from Tiafoe on the second serve, but also Sinner just really putting a lot of pressure on Tiafoe in those service games as well. So I really liked that from Jannik Sinner, and obviously he's going to need those types of service numbers when he plays against a guy like Zverev. One thing that I will say is the one strategy I didn't really like, I felt like Tiafoe was getting into a lot of longer rallies with Sinner, and those are not going to favor him too much. I think he's got to play some quicker points, and hopefully he'll be able to make some adjustments for the next matchup. Let's take a look at the next quarterfinal. And before I start this one, that result for Sinner and Tiafoe was a 6-2, 6-2 win for Jannik Sinner. I don't think I mentioned it, so I just wanted to get so quickly into the breakdown to talk about that match with you guys. But let's take a look at this match. This was a 6-1, 6-2 win for Zverev. And, talk about these two straightforward matches, especially after the two quarterfinals the day before, which were anything but straightforward. This match, a little bit more straightforward than the Sinner one. Zverev just coming out on fire with that first serve. Looking at his service numbers, 76% first serves, won 84% of those. And here's another kicker: 78% of second serve points won. That's extremely good. And again, that's the numbers that Zverev's going to need to bring into a match against Jannik Sinner. We will talk about that in a second. Cerundolo's numbers, not great. 57% first serves, won 65% of those points, and only 35% of the second serve. Zverev just did such a great job of dictating from the baseline, moving Cerundolo off the middle of the court. Cerundolo just not really able to get settled in, not really able to get his forehand going the way that he wanted. And this was just a great match for Zverev. Especially, I had predicted, I thought it was going to be a little bit trickier for him. I thought it might have been a three-setter. And for Zverev to get through this match relatively quickly and have that turnaround tomorrow to play the semifinals, that's nice to be able to get on and off the court quickly and get ready for that night match against Sinner. Let's talk about that match. And this is a perfect semifinal for prime time. We have Jannik Sinner taking on Alexander Zverev, the number 2 versus the number 3 player in the world, with a chance to go to the finals of the Miami Open. Looking at this head-to-head, it is 7-4, and as we discussed when we looked at it for the semifinal of Indian Wells, it was 5 straight for Sinner. He was able to make it 6 straight. Last match coming in Indian Wells, it was a 6-2, 6-4 win for Jannik Sinner in the semifinals. Sinner has won 11 of the last 12 sets they have played. So it is an extremely lopsided head-to-head recently. This is something that Zverev obviously needs to figure out to turn around if he wants to advance to deeper in these Grand Slam tournaments or start winning these Master Series, having to go through either Jannik Sinner or Carlos Alcaraz. But the one thing that we emphasized when we were going over the semifinal last time was Sinner's ability to neutralize the big weapon of Zverev, his first serve. And let's take a look at those numbers here from Zverev on the serve. 66% first serves. He won 80% of those. That's not bad. That's a typical Zverev day. We talked about how that number, that first serve percentage, needs to be around 70, 75 if he wants to push a guy like Sinner. He cannot have a 66% serving day and expect to survive here. The other number that stuck out blatantly for us was the second serve points won, 28%. Zverev only winning 5 second serve points. Not good. 3 breaks from Sinner out of the 6 chances that he had, breaking at 50%. That is extremely strong. He just put a lot of pressure on the Zverev serve, and you can see the numbers. The numbers are going down, and not because Zverev had a bad serve, because Sinner is putting so much pressure on that serve. So much pressure on Zverev to make a good first serve, to make a strong first serve, and then to come up with a strong second serve. Otherwise, Sinner's right on top of him. He's going to start dictating. And when Zverev can't play his serve +1 or get some forced errors on his serve, it becomes an extremely difficult day for him. Now, obviously, today against Cerundolo, he was able to do all of that, and he looked great. But we can't weigh that too much. Yes, a 6-1, 6-2 win in the in the quarterfinals for Zverev. We can't weigh that too much as we're looking at this match. This is a completely different animal that he's going to play tomorrow. Now, one thing that I do want to note here with Sinner, and it's not going to come into effect in this match, but when you guys start to look at the finals, Sinner hasn't played a day match yet. As far as I think he played one match that was in towards the late afternoon. Okay. But if he does play during the day, I think that's very important to kind of look at how the body's going to hold up there. Towards the end of that Indian Wells match, it looked like he was starting to cramp again. He was getting a little bit fatigued. They were playing long points, of course. Medvedev just getting everything back, making Sinner come up with big body blow after big body blow. But I am curious in the finals. That's not going to be a night match as far as I know. So he's going to have to play a little bit under the elements. So will be really interesting to see how he handles that. I know Serena Williams was one of the players that was pretty well known for. She knew she would get a lot of night matches. That she's a big ticket. Obviously, everybody wants to come and see her. They put her on at night. It's a big crowd always. But she would always make an effort to play at least a couple of day matches in tournaments like this in the U.S. Open because she knew that the finals or the semifinals potentially would be during the day, and she wanted to be ready. She didn't want to have to figure it out in a semifinal when you're playing a person that is going to be a very high level player. You'd rather figure it out a little bit in a first round, second round, third round scenario rather than a semifinal scenario. So just keep that in mind as we go into the final with Sinner. Now, admittedly, guys, I did pick Zverev to make the finals, but I really thought that I didn't think Sinner was going to make it out to this point. I thought he was going to lose early. I thought maybe the body was going to fatigue a little bit. But he looks great. He looks strong. Took care of Tiafoe very easily today. This is such a hard match for me to like. It's hard because I hate picking against. I said Zverev to the finals, but I just can't pick it here, guys. 11 out of 12 sets. That's all. That's all I need to say. He's won 11 out of 12 sets. I'm the number 3 guy. You can tell the gap between 2 and 3 is extremely large, and honestly, the gap between 3 and 4 is pretty big as well. I gotta go with Sinner here. I think the fast courts are going to help Zverev. I think they're going to push Sinner maybe a little bit more. The Indian Wells courts, the ball's just sitting up for you. It flops up after like 4 games, and the Zverev serve becomes less effective. I don't think we're going to see that much here. I think we're going to have the opportunity for Zverev to kind of push Sinner a little bit more on his serve. I think we might see a 7-5 or a breaker, and we might see Zverev take a set. I don't know if I would go that far to say that Zverev's going to take a set. I think that would be great. I would love to see that because I want to see Alexander Zverev prove to us that he can hang with these guys and prove to himself. He talked about the confidence. Does he have the confidence to play against these guys and to hang with them in Grand Slams, to win Grand Slams? And a match like this, if he's able to win it, even if he's able to take a set, I think goes a long way for him, especially going to the clay season where we know he's had a ton of success. I'm going to go with Sinner. I think it's going to be Sinner in straight sets. I think one set's going to be tough, and then the next set's going to be like a 6-2. So give me Sinner in straight sets. And just to recap, our semifinal picks are Fils to win in 3 sets and Sinner to win in straight sets. That would give us a Fils-Sinner final, which I think would be a lot of fun, a lot of shot making in that final. Hopefully we get it, and then we'll talk about it when we get to it. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Share your picks in the comments. Share the video. Obviously, once these semifinals are concluded, we will have a video out for the finals. Looking forward to it. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.